about 928,523 farmers, cropping 1.8,557,000 hectares are at risk. And I'm talking about those at risk. These farmers will lose an estimated investment of 7.4 billion cedis if there is total crop failure. The 928,523 farmers cropping 1.8,507,000 hectares, those at risk, they will lose an estimated investment of 7.4 billion if there is total crop failure. The corresponding revenue loss is estimated at 22.2 billion. So the investment is what they put in seeds, in inputs, fertilizers, farm hands, and all that they put into crop. That is 7 billion. The revenue is the sales, what they will derive from the investment that they will make. And that is estimated at 22 billion, representing 10% of agriculture GDP, which in itself is about 220 billion. As at 20th August, 435,872 farmers cultivating an estimated area of 871,000 hectares have been directly affected. So earlier on, I talked about those at risk being 928,523. The 435,872 are those that have been confirmed as affected as at 20th August, and the audit is still ongoing. With the projected shortfall in grain supply, government will tap into the ECOWAS grain reserve and partner with the private sector to bridge the gap. Government will also bring in 300,000 metric tons of maize and 150,000 metric tons of rice to provide food support to vulnerable farmers who have lost their crop and also for the market. Additionally, we will bring in a total volume of 26,000 metric tons of poultry feed to directly support the poultry industry as maize, their main raw material, has been severely affected. And of the at risk, we have been able to confirm 435,000, cultivating 871,000 hectares. Government has decided to provide financial support amounting to 1,000 Ghana cedis per hectare to the most vulnerable among these farmers as partial cover for their investment. Government will also provide affected vulnerable farmers with some food grant to enable them meet their minimum nutritional requirement.
We are seeking to raise about $500 million, the equivalent of 8 billion Ghana cedis, to fund the crisis response program. This is so much money, but we are doing this also at a time when our buffers are almost depleted. And so we intend to trigger the processes for accessing the contingency fund. We are also doing what we call budgetary alignment to reallocate some funds that were originally meant for other purposes towards addressing the crisis. And so together, 2.5 billion Ghana cedis being mobilized from the budget side. We also relying on our development partners, and we've had serious engagements with our development partners over the past 1 week or so. And within this short period, we can report that we are able to secure $155 million. That is about 2.4 billion, almost 2.5 billion Ghana cedis. And so out of the 8 billion Ghana cedis we are seeking to mobilize, we can say that we have visibility on about 5 billion Ghana cedis that we want to use and use it quickly to respond to this crisis.
So there you have it, droughts in 8 regions, forcing governments to, with immediate effect, ban exports of maize, rice and soybean in a move to avert a looming food crisis. And this situation also is estimated to cause some revenue losses of about 10.4 billion Ghana cedis. And the Ministry of Finance is in the process of raising some 8 billion Ghana cedis, as you saw there. The finance minister addressing the press. And this is supposed to bring in some relief to the affected farmers. Let's discuss this. On phone with me this morning is Dr. Godfred Seidu Jasso, the Deputy Ranking Member on Food, Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs Committee of Parliament. Doc, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Great. First, I want to find out from you, what's your assessment of the looming food crisis and the response that government has given us thus far?
First of all, I think the looming food crisis is real. The dry spells have come. In the last 8 weeks, we've not had rain, except in the last 2 or 3 days that the rains have started to come in the northern part of Ghana, and indeed across about 8 regions. Now, the question is, what have we been doing in the last 8 years? You would agree that we have spent over 3 billion Ghana cedis over a 7-year period on a flagship project that is supposed to throw out food produce for this country. We have not been able to put in place any strategic storage arrangement in place so that in times like this, we can have access to food stocks. We have the institutions, we have the National Food Buffer Stock, and in the same period, we have consistently starved the National Food Buffer Stock of resources to be able to carry out this mandate. Now, we have had one district, one warehouse implemented for the last 7 years. How come these warehouses are unable to store any food for us in these times? How come we have said that that project, Planting for Food and Jobs 1, has completed, even though we've not had any evaluation reports or terminal reports of its completion, and we've embarked on a second phase, which for 2 years now have not been able to produce a single grain into the Ghanaian economy. And yet, we spent another 660 million Ghana cedis in 2023 on the second phase of the Planting for Food and Jobs.
Right.
Plus, another 700 million Ghana cedis this year budgeted for Planting for Food and Jobs phase 2. So if you look at this context and you juxtapose that with government response, that it is going to inject 8 billion Ghana cedis in what? Are you going to do conditional cash transfers to people to eat the money? Are you going to import food? So after implementing 7 years of a program that is supposed to produce food for you, 8 weeks of drought, you are left spellbound, and you have to inject 8 billion Ghana cedis. So please, something is not right.
Right.
And we should interrogate these issues further.
Doc,
Now,
I want us to stay on the figure.
Yes, please.
I want us to stay on the figure for a bit. Now, the government has tasked Finance Ministry to raise that 8 billion. How effective do you believe this financial intervention would be in addressing the immediate challenges? I mean, be that as it may, all the monies that has been sunk into these projects so far, we are facing looming food crisis. How effective do you think this intervention will be in addressing the immediate challenges that we are facing now?
I think I spoke to you in October or to your other colleague, and I said to him that this Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2, the document that I have read, is just another opportunity for sharing Ghana's resources to colleagues and cronies. Because there's really nothing actionable in that document and that implementation. And this has been proven right. Now, the same way, unless we are given and provided an implementation and a disbursement plan, that we are convinced that that money's disbursement is supposed to tackle the food insecurity situation that we are facing now. But when you start with saying that you are banning food exportation, you see, we don't even have exportation of the grains as we speak now. We are not exporting maize. We are not exporting rice. We are not exporting soya. So when government comes to tell you in a press conference, rightly organized press conference, that they are banning these grains, I put it to you that those grains are not being exported in the first place. So what are you banning? Besides, we are hosting the African Continental Free Trade.
Right.
What is the implication of these policy measures, or if you like, this soldier man kind of measure on our food security situation? We are importing tomato from neighboring countries. We are importing onions from them. We are importing small ruminants from them. Now, there's the same drought has been occasioned in those countries as well. Just imagine a situation where they decide to also write and ban the importation of the exportation of these to our country. Do you know where we will be? So even as a government, we're expecting that government will take a comprehensive review of the situation, involve stakeholders, involve the continental leaders as well, at least ministers of agriculture. Then we can come to a common position on how to deal with this situation sustainably. But when you announce populist measures that you are going to ban food exportation, when in the first place you are not exporting anything, and then you are saying that you are going to inject money, when we have evidence that you've already injected 3.2 billion, and this is where it has brought us, you are going to inject additional 8 billion. We are scared that this is just another avenue to repeat what happened in COVID-19 support from the global community.
But
and that we wouldn't be able to tell where the accountability arrangements have been put in.
Okay.
That is the fear. And so there's a genuine fear that based on the history, this 8 billion, the application of this 8 billion ought to be thoroughly investigated and interrogated to know exactly what we'll be doing, who will be involved. For example, if we are importing food, from where? If we bring the food, why are we dealing with it? Government, private sector, selling at control prices, distributing for free.
Dr. Jesel, so I'll come to you again in a bit about how you're escalating and what you are doing as deputy ranking member. But I mean, you are also the member of parliament for Wa East, and this affects your people there. Are you saying that, I mean, the highlights of the interventions, like the supports for farmers, compensation for affected farmers, and so on and so forth, in no way eases the plight of these farmers? Are you saying there's nothing in there for them, for the people in your constituency as well?
So the people in my constituency have been badly affected. They need to be supported. They need to be compensated. However, we are dealing with a system that has a history. So I'm now that unless something is done to ensure that these measures announced are exactly what's going to happen, I fear that the disbursement of this resource will not be different from what we've experienced in the disbursement of the 3.2 or the COVID fund. And this, you and I have lived through it. And so you can appreciate the apprehensions that we have. Because it's common that government announces blanket figures. But as to how it's going to be done and operationalized, nobody tells you that.
Well, fortunately, we have...
After, when you do an audit, then you realize that these monies actually went to individual pockets and cronies' pockets. That is my fear. So we need some guarantee. We need some assurance that this money is just not a populist announcement and that that money is even available in the first place. What percentage of it is going to food importation? What percentage of it is going to compensation? Compensation for who? What category of farming?
All right, Doc. Fortunately, we have the PRO for the Ministry of Food and Agriculture on the phone with us, so maybe he can help us answer some of these questions. Mr. Tanko Bagbara, thank you for joining the conversation.
Wow.
Great. So I'm not sure. I don't know if you were following Dr. Jasol's submission and some of the questions he's posing as to where the money is going and how you actually intend to alleviate the plight of the people. So you give us an overview of what these interventions really are and the timelines that you're working with, and then we get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity and a very good morning to your listeners and viewers as well. I did listen to Doc. He's my senior brother and MP. Normally, I wouldn't do this speaking to politicians on a platform. Normally, I wouldn't do it, but I owe it a duty as a professional to speak to the issues. And first of all, I want to allay the fears of my senior brother and MP that it is not an avenue to, as it were, disbate the public funds. And we given the highest level of assurance that this package announced there's going to be a task force. And of course, the minister has made it open that whoever wishes Ghana well and wants to be part of this team for us to secure our foods is welcome to come on board. Yes, the PFJ 2.0, as we all know, is an input subsidy program which replaces an input credit system, which replaces the input subsidy that we used to practice. And indeed, we did this to open it up for commercial and mechanized agriculture. Because as a country, if we want to go beyond food security and industrialize, then we need to go commercial, and that is a way forward. With the PFJ 2.0, we have a platform that you can actually monitor and track whatever investment that is made into the program. So we call it a Ghana Agriculture and Agribusiness Platform, which is called the GAP. Gone are the days where we use pen and paper to register farmers. Farmers can go and register by themselves for the first phase. The second phase, our Agri Extension officers will bring you on. They will map out your farm polygon onto the system. So at the click of the button, we know that Kofi Mensah does maize in Tachiman. This is the size of his farm. Kofi Mensah actually requested for 10 bags of fertilizer, 100 kg of seed. So all that is transparent on the platform. Under this year under review, we had several input distribution packages. One is for the vulnerable groups. And with that, my senior brother will recall that the minister wrote to him, to all members of parliament, offering them the opportunity in their various constituencies and districts. They should identify 100 vulnerable farmers. And these inputs are given to them to give it to these vulnerable groups. Again, the DC is in every district, and municipal and metropolitan assemblies have been given the opportunity to identify 100 vulnerable groups or persons with disabilities that want to enter into agriculture and give them these inputs. Again, we had 15 for the district directors of agriculture to do same. When we come to the Akosombo dam spillage victims, through the World Bank, the ministry is actually supporting farmers and restoring them to their livelihood. Inputs have been given for us in the form of grants. And then when we come to the PFJ 2.0 itself, what we call the input credit system, where inputs are given to you, you don't pay by cash, but when you harvest, we take we recover wet produce, which is sent to government warehouse. So I give my senior brother MP the highest level of assurance that the system is so transparent, and if he want to visit us at the ministry, we'll walk him through this the dashboard for him to see the number of farmers who have registered, those who have requested for input. Everything is on display there. Now let's deal with the predicament that we have at hand. This calls for measures that will sustain our food security. We all know the quantity of grains that come from the north and the middle belt. Over 62% of our grain needs, which is maize, soya, sorghum, and all that, comes from the northern part of the country. My senior brother knows we have what we call millet. You can't find millet in any part of this country, if not the northern part of our country. So we are simply saying that we want to be food secure. For the next quarter of the year, you know, northern Ghana, we do harvest from November, December. It's this harvesting season. And that is when we have our neighbors trooping into our farm communities. In fact, they pitch camps. And then they buy the grains off the farmers from the farm gate and take it out to unapproved routes. We want that to stop so that the little harvest that is expected, we will be able to protect it to serve our food security needs. We also know that the soya bean is mostly cultivated in these areas, and it's a hot industrial crop for the livestock sector. And we know we have foreigners who are actually in this country, and that is their trade. So when they take this out, our livestock sector is going to suffer. So this place of ban, normally, we did it before by executive approval. We did it before. It worked to a large extent, but this time around we want it to work to the latter. And therefore, there's strong collaboration with Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Local Government to ensure that even we as citizens should police this process and ensure that no single grain is taken out.
Right.
Yes,
Mr. Bagbara, please hold for me. Mr. Bagbara, did we or were we exporting these grains before now? Because, you know, Mr. Jassor was just saying that we don't even export these in the first place. So why the ban now on the exports of these grains? Were we exporting? And if we did, what was the quantity that we were exporting?
Well, I won't be able to give you figures as I speak, but like I just mentioned, at harvest, you come to our region, Upper West, that I can clearly, I have seen and can speak to it, that our neighbors pitch camps in our communities. And because the farmers need ready cash, they offer these produce to these farmers. We're also aware this industrial crop, soya bean, we have some foreigners in town. And those are the examples I can immediately cite.
Right.
So these unapproved routes, we cannot even account for the quantities of export, illegal export that goes into neighboring countries. For that, it is real and it is on record. However, we need data with regards to exports. I think the Ministry of Trade and Industry can help us with those figures.
So then, I mean, I'm curious to know what explains buffer stock struggles to cope with the increased demand and the reduced supply, you know, caused by the adverse weather conditions. But what happened to the buffer stock?
Yes, so we all know that as a country, we've never practiced the buffer stock system. And that is why PFJ 2.0 is proposing this, that out of the recoveries, 5% will be put in what we call national strategic stock, which will serve as a buffer. Buffer stock company, we know, lacks the credit facility to go into the capital market, as it were, borrow and be able to mop up whatever is in the system. And therefore, we, at the buffer stock, what they will normally do is to license producer buying institutions, and then they go into the community and mop up for buffer stock to pick and for onward distribution to state institutions. For some time now, that is what they have been doing. We have not, as a country, practiced the buffer stock system. So under PFJ 2.0, that is what we are seriously pushing to ensure our resilience when it comes to food security. And I think in that regard, buffer stock will have a more expanded role to play in that area.
And what timelines are we working with? For example, in terms of compensation, that's 1,000 cedi per hectare compensation. When are you going to start disbursing these monies to these farmers? Give us the timelines for the entire intervention.
Yes, as the Minister for Finance mentioned yesterday, even this cash that he put forward is not all going to come in the form of cash. Of course, we have our development partners who have offered to support, maybe in terms of inputs, in terms of produce, wet. So it's a process that we are rolling. As we speak, our MNU officers are even still on the farm and trying to do detailed correlation of data and analysis. Based on that, the task force will be put in place. Let me also state that in order to give a package to our farmers who may still have grains and want to sell, government says that we want to mop up and put in strategic stock. So approach any of our district agriculture officers and tell them I have X amount of, X quantity of rice or maize, and then government will be ready to mop up into strategic stocks. So it's a process. As the days unfold, we will be updating Ghanaians as far as those interventions are concerned.
Right. And then beyond the immediate 8 billion allocation, what long-term strategies does the government have in place to prevent future agricultural crises like we're seeing now? I mean, is it safe to say that we didn't plan for this? And if so, what are we putting in place to ensure that the future doesn't meet us in the same situation?
Yes, the immediate measure we need to put in place, first of all, is to be able to understand our climate change very well. And as a result, even yesterday, the minister had to meet with the meteorological agency to strengthen our collaboration. The ministry, through our program, FSRP, is supporting them with some equipment, which will, as I speak, about 20 of them are going to be installed across the country to help them be able to predict and advise us as farmers. In fact, they've been embedded now. They've been embedded in the agriculture and agribusiness platform, where farmers will have direct access to very reliable weather information that will inform the planning in terms of our calendar of production. The other area we need to look at as a country is the irrigation infrastructure development. Thankfully, so much has been done. The power irrigation scheme went through vigorous rehabilitation. It is functional now. When you go to Tono, Navrongo, that scheme has also gone through a complete rehabilitation, very functional. As we speak, via irrigation is undergoing. As we speak, Afram Plains, we have the Afram Plains Economic Enclave Irrigation Scheme. That is also happening. And when all these things are put to full use, then as a country we'll be moving away from the rain-fed agriculture into a more reliable source of water. With water, you can be assured that production, you get good yields.
Mr. Bagbara, hold for me. Dr. Jasal, so, I mean, what are your reflections on some of the responses that the PRO for the Food and Agriculture Ministry is saying to us this morning?
Okay, thank you, Titi. And I thank my brother, Tanko, for doing a very good public relations work. Titi, you agree with me that the focus of our conversation is on the crisis we find ourselves in and what the announced measures will do and whether that will be sustainable. I heard my brother talk a lot about planting and stew and how it and how they have got data and how they are using to vulnerable families and so on and so forth. You see, with a way your on this position, what I like is that you have identified 200 vulnerable farmers in all farming in this district. You've given the inputs to them. and the inputs have been used.
Doc, we are getting some interference in your submission. Could you kindly just reposition and try again? We're losing you there a bit.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Is it better now?
Yes, it's better. Please go ahead.
Okay. So what you have done, all you have put in is actually suffering from drought. Mm-hmm. And there's a risk that the food will not come from those fields. Now, you have also shifted from input subsidy that was supposed to be supporting smallholder farmers to an input credit system led by private sector. As we speak, some of those aggregators, the so-called private sector, are yet to advance inputs to farmers to be able to use to cultivate for this year. The few that have also got these inputs used, but at risk of losing those produce that are envisaged to come out. That's why we are in a crisis. So that's the reality. So whatever flowery descriptions you've given about GAP and how the planting goes, is what is resulting is that we fear that we will not be getting the grain. Now, even think of the situation where we are getting the grain, and you are saying that you are putting a ban on exports. I'm arguing that you have not always been successful in executing the ban because of the nature of our geography and our surrounding country. You have been reported to tell us that even the fertilizer that you have subsidized have ridden on the backs of donkeys and gotten their way into the neighboring country. What has happened to these donkeys? So you have always not utilized the national buffer stock for one reason. It was just political infighting between the last Minister of Agriculture and the CEO of buffer stock. We've called all of them to committee and we'll be able to establish this fact. The truth is that the national food buffer stock was established to be able to play this critical role.
Right.
And that they were not just primarily supposed to buy food and give to school feeding projects. No. That's an after activity. It's not the core activity. The core activity was for the buffer stock to have license buying companies or subsidiaries across the country. Annually, the buffer stock was set commodity prices for our grain. And that they set these prices informed by the cost of production. So if cost of production of, say, a bag of maize is 50 Ghana cedis, the buffer stock will add a margin and say maybe 60 Ghana cedis, so that the farmer can be encouraged to sell either to the market or to the buffer stock and yet not run at a loss. That way, the farmer is encouraged to continue producing in subsequent years. Now, we let buffer stock to renege on that obligation. So they don't announce commodity prices. They don't have the money to go and buy excess food produce in the market. And so what happens is that the farmers also cannot hold this produce. One, they don't have good storage systems. They don't have good processing systems. So what happens is that the neighboring markets come in and take advantage of it in informal ways. So just last year, you will recall paddy rice producers were complaining in Upper East region that they have produced a lot of paddy and yet there was no market. Right. Government had no silos to store them. And so the only rational, plausible solution was for them to sell it to any available market. And our counterparts from Nigeria came and bought them through unauthorized routes and unauthorized systems. So you can't even track that as Ministry of Trade, how much more Ministry of Agric. So my point is that those things that my brother has explained are more in theory than in practice.
Right.
And for now, we should stop the politics of it. We have a reality, we have a challenge on the ground, and our population is at risk of food insecurity.
Doc,
so if we go by the business as usual measures, it's not going to help us. That's the point I'm making.
Doc, I want to bring in the executive director of Peasant Farmers, but quick thoughts before I move on from you. The
Sure.
Brian Champon mentioned that we contribute to the ECOWAS grain fund or grain reserve. Is that something that we should be happy about, because there's something for us over there, and we even have some of the storage points here in Ghana? It's something
Yes.
to celebrate.
So Ghana tended to store some of those grain buffers for ECOWAS. And won the bid. So Ghana is holding some strategic stock for ECOWAS.
Yeah.
I think 500,000 metric tons or something. I've forgotten the figure, but I can always check.
Okay.
Now, now what would that do? It's not for Ghana. It's for the rest of the sub-region. What are the modalities in utilizing that? How much of it is going to come to Ghana? At what conditions? So it's a no in the first place. If you rely on that, you will be deluding your people. And that's not going to help.
Okay.
So the truth, just before you leave,
yeah,
my brother mentioned irrigation and so on. You see, we have existing completed water facilities in the system. We have not done well in making sure we have water facility user education and capacity for our farmers. So most of these dams are lying there, and farmers only allow their animals to go and drink from them. But utilize them in irrigation agriculture has not been as aggressive as we have thought. I hope that the ministry can rewrite their nose and focus on making sure that happens in the context of climate change. Titi, you also remember the greenhouses. We have over 70 greenhouses at Greater Accra, Armenia.
right.
Now, and in the Wena. Now, these greenhouses have a capacity of solving the tomato and onion requirement for our economy. And yet, for 7 years, we've abandoned that project. See, this is where we need such initiatives. The infrastructure is there. I would not be able to use them. Because when political parties change hands, the new Agric Minister then just abandoned them.
Okay.
And this minister has not also continued. I'm sure he has not had a lot of time to deal with those things coming to office since October anyway. So these are the problems. And so there's a real challenge. And I hope that this conversation does not degenerate into a partisan banter. Because 2-3 months down the line, we'll be all caught hands down.
Okay.
And it's important that we deliberate on these issues dispassionately, devoid of partisan interest and outreach, and make sure that we get the best of the 8 billion that the minister has promised. And I tell you, one, that money isn't going to come the way we talked about it. That's one. Two, we need to have a disbursement arrangement and how that money will be spent. Every Ghanaian must come up, because we have a history of monies like that being voted for this by this government, and this government has squandered them. So
I'm sure
money, cannot be counted.
Tanko would elaborate more on how they're disbursing this. But I want to bring in Bismarck Tete, and he's Executive Director for the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. Bismarck, thank you for joining the AM show. I want to hear from you what these interventions change in your current struggles, amidst this drought, and what you make of the compensations that the minister, the Brian Champon, is proposing to give you as farmers, that 1,000 per hectare compensation.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Indeed, yesterday we listened to the minister outline measures to mitigate the effects of the dry spell. And I must admit that when we had the press conference last week to highlight the effect of the dry spell, some of these recommendations were made. So it's just in good order to acknowledge that some of them were adhered to. The issue is that, one, regarding the ban on the exports, which seems to be the highlight of the whole measures.
Right.
I think that the approach is a bit premature in our opinion.
Premature.
We think that the process to do that was and the process to do that was not consultative to ensure that farmers don't suffer the adverse effects of the impending ban. Now, the reason why we are making this point is that, this is not the first time government has tried to announce the ban on cereals, especially maize and soya. And you realize that anytime these bans are announced, the effect is that farmers suffer low prices. Because what this ban does is that it limits the number of buyers who are available to buy produce from farmers. And what it does is that farmers are now being compelled to sell at low prices, which do not make up for their cost of production. So our expectation was that if you were going to announce a ban, it shouldn't be in isolation. There should be other complementary measures that will ensure that the farmer is not shortchanged. And we were expecting that, because I heard you mention that if you're a farmer and you have your produce and you want to sell, you can contact the agri directors or the district agri directors.
Yeah.
But at what price? And at what price would they sell that produce, or would they buy the produce from the farmer? We do not know. What is the guarantee that when the farmers go, the price that they will offer are price that makes sense to the farmer? So the best thing we could have done was to at least set a minimum price that the government is ready to buy at price A or at price B. If the farmer realizes that the price is competitive, I can tell you that there is no motivation for any farmer to go and sell outside when he or she knows that you can sell within Ghana and make your money back. So that is the one of the issues that we have with the ban. And so that if government wants it to work, they should look at the other measures to ensure that farmers are not shortchanged. Then the issue about the cash grant that the government intends to give. My understanding of what the minister said is that out of the over 400,000 farmers that were directly affected, the ministry was going to select the vulnerable of the 400,000 and give them cash transfer of 1,000 cedis per hectare. Our issue is that, one, which criteria is the ministry going to use to identify the vulnerable out of the 400,000? And if those things are not clear, it opens up room for abuse of the process. And we've seen instances where government interventions are being taken over by politicians. And for instance, what is happening with the PFD? So our fear is that if we do not have in place adequate measures, transparent mechanisms that ensure that the right farmers are actually benefiting, then I'm sorry, it might be an avenue for government to perpetrate vote buying as we approach the election year. And that's a fear that we have.
Right.
So we are hoping that we put in place very transparent mechanisms, ensure that farmers are able to do that. And then when it comes to the input support, my understanding is that the ministry is saying that they are going to use the Ghana Agriculture and Agribusiness Platform under the Ghc22.2 to register the farmers who will benefit from the input support. I also have a problem with that, because this same platform is being used under the current Ghc2.0. And there have been several challenges with the platform.
Like
the
what?
first place is that if you go to several districts, you can have a district that have about just 5 or 8 extension officers who are supposed to register over 80,000, 90,000 farmers. And these officers are not even able to move to do the registration. They are not able to locate farmers to do the registration. Some of them even do not have the equipment, that's the laptops, to even do that, or even have fuel to move. So if you are going to put this responsibility back on them with these same challenges, what is the guarantee that all the affected farmers will be able to register under a platform to benefit?
Okay.
So if you are putting in place that measure, what is the alternative that should be in place to ensure that the farmers who are affected are actually identified, they are registered, and they properly benefit? So I think that even though the approach we understand is an emergency situation, we need a lot of measures to ensure that we get the best out of it. If not, then it's an exercise in futility. I'm sorry for that.
Bismarck Sese, thank you for me. And hold for me. We still have Tanko Bagbara on the line with us. Tanko, so 3 main issues for you to address. First, did you engage these farmers to understand what their needs really are and how these interventions would affect or reflect on their struggle? And two, what criteria are you using to identify these vulnerable people who are receiving that cash compensation? And then three, the issue about inadequate facilities, using that PFJ.2 system to disburse this money for those that fall under the category of vulnerable farmers.
Yeah, so let me say I appreciate the position of your panelists, especially my senior brother and MP, Doctor. Yeah, so it is very necessary for us to do this sort of engagement that gives us a lot of more ideas that we can bring on board. And the common goal is to fight hunger in Ghana. And I think their views are well noted, and it will be put into consideration to ensure that the resources that we are gathering as a nation will be put to judicious use. So in terms of identifying vulnerable farmers, as I mentioned, the District Director of Agriculture, the DCs, and the MPs, they are on the ground. They are in the community. They will be in a better position to identify these farmers. Yes, with the distribution of inputs and whatever interventions to ensure accountability, yes, we have the agribusiness and agriculture and agribusiness platform. All will be captured on that platform for us to have the transparency and a record that we can always.
But he said there are some challenges with that, though. Like some of the farmers don't have computers and all those challenges. How would you address that to ensure that you actually reach as many people as need to be reached for this?
Please come again. I didn't hear.
Okay, so Bismarck was saying that the problem with using the Agric and agribusiness platform is that some of the farmers don't have computers and access to internet and all those challenges. And so if that is the only medium to identify and disburse funds, then you'll be leaving some people out.
Yes, I understand the situation in which we are. Even when it came to the farmer registration, we had those challenges. Those who are unable to use smartphones had that challenge, and our AEs were given some gadgets to be able to assist farmers to register, and provision was also made for self-registration. So we are going to go through same procedure. Last year we had challenges when it came to registration. We had our tablets breaking down. Since then, new tablets have been procured, and all Agric Extension officers have functional tablets that are available for us to deploy.
Are you saying you are going to use the same procedure, although the peasant farmers are saying that would leave some of these farmers shortchanged? Is that what you're saying?
I just mentioned that when we started the farmer registration, we have some challenges with the technology, but we've since perfected. We've worked on the
so you've
platform.
Worked on these challenges. We can work no longer exist
offline. We can work offline, and then with internet, you onboard everything online. So those challenges have been sorted out, and it is working perfectly as we speak.
Hold for me, please. Bismarck, is that correct? The PRO is saying that those challenges have been perfected and it's working now. When was the last time you checked?
I don't think.
When last did you check?
I don't think that is exactly the case. I understand where he's coming from, but that was not exactly the case. Because even just last week, I was in the field, even around, not even in northern Ghana, even around southern Ghana, in the western region. And you could have a situation where in a particular district, you have just about 4 extension officers who are supposed to register in about 60,000, 70,000 farmers. And these extension officers, they even tell you that the gadget that they have to use, some of them are even broken down. And some of the extension officers do not have even the means to even move to the farmers to register. So even in some districts in western region, I can tell an authority that not even a single farmer has been able to benefit from the PFJ 2.0 because their data has not been captured on the platform.
Okay.
And this situation exists across the country. So even though I understand where he's coming from, the situation is much more bigger than what he's saying.
All right. So, Mr. Tanko Bagwara, we do have to go, but maybe you can wrap up on, you had him there, he said that the situation is bigger than what the picture you're painting. But Dr. Jassau also raised the issue of how you are going to be disbursing this 8 million investment.
Yes, so
what's the plan there?
For disbursement, the modality for disbursement will be determined in the coming days. Like I said, the ministry is not just going to do this alone. We have our DPs, we have our partners who are interested in this, and we'll be forming that task force that will ensure that this national assignment is carried out to the letter and without any form of issues that will dissipate the public purse. So all I'll say is that we take note of their concerns, and moving forward, all these concerns will be factored into decision making. Dr.
Jassau, I'll give you the final word.
Thank you very much. I admire the approach of the PRO that it's still rolling out, and they are amenable to inputs and suggestions. And so I also like the fact that he's acknowledging the development partners, because in fact last week I did engage some development partners on this subject matter, and I'm aware that they are putting in place packages to do that. And I won't be surprised that that's part of the 8 billion, if not the whole, that the ministry is already announcing. And I hope that if it is from development partners, government alone doesn't appropriate it to itself. Number 2 is about the quantum of support. 1,000 cedis per hectare.
Yeah.
A hectare is 2.5 acres. And so they're looking at current value of Ghana cedis. You see that that's really next to nothing for a farmer for even a month, how much more a whole year. And so I hope that we can be able to put in place arrangements that can bring in a lot more support around the subject, so that if we have to compensate in cash terms, but also in some food produce terms as well for the very vulnerable families. For the commercial entities, a discussion with the finance institutions where their credit, etc., loans have been taken from, if there can be some kind of a moratorium on when they can repay this and under what conditions, that will cushion the commercial farmers in a way that can allow them to survive through this. But be it as it may, in the end, as a committee, we will invite the ministry to come for further deeper deliberations around this subject matter.
Okay.
And so that we as people's representatives will ensure that the right thing is done even in this current dying situation.
Okay.
As for the GAP system, as a tool to be able to disburse this, I think we still need some supplementary arrangement to be able to do that, because the GAP system is not comprehensive enough. It is an ongoing database gathering. It's not complete at all. In my district, for example, I have about 90,000 population. About 75% of them are farmers, and just about 3,000 farmers have been registered.
Okay.
And so it's a no. It won't reach the farmers that we need to reach.
Okay. Hopefully we get the details and updates on that interaction with the ministry when you invite them. But you had the Dr. Godfred Seidu Jassau, the deputy ranking member on food. I almost left you out. Bismarck Tete, you have the final word now. Bismarck, are you still with us? I think.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think that when you are in such an emergency situation, the best approach is to have very inclusive and constitutive process to ensure that all stakeholders have their say and ensure that no one is disadvantaged because of an intervention you are putting in place. So I'll urge the ministry that they should open up their doors for us to engage. The concerns we have regarding the ban, the concerns we have regarding the cash transfer and input credits, I think that once we're able to address it, we should be able to implement something that will benefit the farmers. But in the long term, it should also give us an insight as to what we should do in the long term. Because this is an indictment on all the investment we have done with regards to irrigation development in the country. And going forward as a country, I think we should have a position as to what practical steps we are taking to ensure that we give ourselves timelines where we know that at a particular point in time, we have been able to at least irrigate most part of the country so that we don't fall back into this situation again.
Thank you so much. You heard there Bismarck Tete, the Executive Director for the Peasants Farmers Association of Ghana.
Your call has been...
So 8 billion Ghana cedis to combat the impact of the dry spell on agriculture. In conclusion, the Committee on Agriculture, Food and Cocoa Affairs in Parliament said they would be inviting the Ministry of Agriculture and the PRO for the ministry, saying that they're open to listen to the concerns of the farmers and take note or factor them in going forward. That's how we're wrapping up for this belt of conversations, but there's still more coming your way before we wrap up. Stay with me.